So it's really important to, as designers, to, reduce the friction that that lets people use the technology. And that's like maybe talking about in a very specific way that the everyday person can understand, right? Ultimately you're building these things, but you also want people to use them.
100%, especially in the consumer use case, right? And we kind of think that, oh, if we're working at an enterprise use case, we might be able to go more forward looking because it is enterprise, right? Where you can have glasses and you can have something that you can have a head-mounted display, right? But at the same time, a lot of the enterprise use cases are for helping people who work with really, really old machinery, right? And everything in their environment is a CRT screen, right? Like an old calculator or the 8-bit displays. So we still have to be very conscious of introducing the right features at the right time. And even if it is enterprise, you have to make it digestible and understandable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Brian. Class, what questions do you have for Brian? There have to be some, right? I mean, from work experiences, higher education, to transitioning careers, or what it's like to job search and find a job in some of the more difficult environments. I don't know if that's something you want to talk about, but
it's very fresh. I can definitely talk about it.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I have a question. So do people like more acceptable to VR or AR? Like, do they feel like a bit of, I don't know, like cold feet from, because for like normal audience, for them to get to the experience, they have to have a device, right?
Yeah.
And so then they have to download a certain app or go to a certain like URL to like get to the experience. Do like people feel like it's like too much of a trouble for them?
This is a great question, actually. So I think it's two things. So let's start with AR first. AR, a lot of it can be done on the web now. There are a lot of good web solutions. So we've seen in the industry an uptick in companies using web AR solutions to do marketing. Like the technology folks at Eighth Wall that I just talked about, I know they've done a lot of marketing campaigns with big companies like Nike and Adidas to have like AR shoes as part of their web campaigns. And even I think it was Volkswagen or Volvo also partnered with them so that you could see like their cars in your driveway if you wanted to, or I guess for us in New York on the street, we don't have driveways. But there's the amount of friction, I think, is really important, because even you find that even a lot of things is like, oh, please go and download our app to do this one thing that you want to do, and that already loses a lot of people. You're like, yeah, I'm not downloading an app to do that one thing. So I think it's important to be conscious of who your users are and kind of like what lengths they'll go to do the task that you want them to accomplish. Why web AR is so powerful, I think, in terms of that, is that you're removing a layer of friction. So you're not requiring someone to download an app that they've never used. If you can do something that, with the existing apps that people have on their phones, then they're more likely to do something, So if it's just scanning a QR code and then it takes them to a web link and then they can use AR right away without downloading an app, everyone has a camera app. And everyone has a web browser. So like there's no additional like friction point in downloading an app. So I think in some of the retail studies surrounding AR, they've like seen like crazy like double-digit conversion rates using AR. So that's AR. VR, I think, is more difficult because no matter how you slice and dice it, you need to purchase something extra. It's, it could be like a $20 cardboard. It could be the, $300 Oculus Quest 2, or even more expensive devices. I think in VR, you're seeing a lot more friction because it's very expensive to get into VR. I was able, like some people are more open to spending that money and trying new things, but you'll also find that it's still, unfortunately, even with how cheap the Oculus Quest 2 is, there is a really big barrier of entry in terms of like hardware. Hardware. Yeah. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I was like just wondering, like how people like reacting to the device thing.
Yeah, and like how people react is totally different, right? Like I have friends that are, I wouldn't say early adopters, but they at least follow what's going on in that space, and I've seen some of them hop on and buy the Oculus Quest 2 because it was so much cheaper and it runs, by itself. It doesn't need a computer. I think it's starting for people to get, it's starting to get easier to convince people to buy into VR and react positively. But reactions to this technology, I think, is very, very dependent also on what things people have tried in the past.
That's a great point. I think those are all great points, Brian. One, I swear I didn't tell Brian to say this before he came to class, but it shows that, the point is right. And we know these stats from back at RGA, right? Like years ago, we found out consumers aren't downloading additional apps. And if they are, they're not really using them. They're only a top set of few apps that people habitually use, right? So another feature doesn't necessarily make an app worth downloading, let alone worth using or continuing to use. So Brian's point about web AR removes friction in the user journey is 100% correct. And that's why we see web AR as a really big opportunity. Second point that I think you brought up that's very salient, Brian, is that a lot of times people's notion of what future experiences are based in their existing experience, right? Or any previous experience they've had. So if they've tried VR and it's given them motion sickness before, that might be what they're expecting. Very good point.
Yeah. I think it's even more important. It's like these things are even more important in a new technology setting, right? Like if you have that one bad experience in VR and it made you sick, you're probably not going to be trying VR for a very long time because you're like, oh, VR. Oh, that made me sick. I'm not doing it again. When in fact, it could have just been a bad experience they were trying, So I think this also like circles back and goes to the human factor of what we're designing for, right? Like you are keeping that in mind. Yes, you're solving for users' pain points and needs, but you're also introducing them to a new technology. A lot of the time you're introducing them to a new technology. So you have to make sure that people are comfortable using it.
Yeah, and that's extremely important, the human factor and also how we message things. Like you notice in your web AR experiences, right? The browser says, would you like to grant permission? But A-Frame and Glitch are so smart that they offer a pre-modal, right? That says, please grant your permission. So even when you start, or especially when you start working for a brand, how do you brand that moment? And you'll notice that the way Twitter or Instagram, how they ask for permissions are totally different, right? And companies that don't get it right, privacy becomes to be a big backlash if they're not messaging correctly. What other questions do you have as a class, or are you ready to share your work? Any further questions for Brian?
I have a question. Can I say, like we are students, so like, and we use web VR, web AR, so we just we have to do everything like coding, modeling, and like everything. But I think I don't know like exactly, but I think in the real industry, like there are some separate part, and there will be like specialists like in department. So like I think like not just one person make like do everything. So to get a job like I don't know which part have to like focus on, and like so I just want to know like in real like big company or some companies industry, I just want to know like how real process goes when
Yeah.
the AR projects or VR projects. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
cool. That's a great question. I think Sam, you can chip in here too, but um, I think that it depends on the company. I think
Mhm.
the smaller, like early stage startups, you'll definitely probably they're looking for someone that can do it all, and
Okay.
that's just the nature of a startup. Like when I was running my startup, I was not just the product designer, right? I was like helping my developer out a little bit. I was like doing a little 3D modeling. I was building up these relationships. I was like the relationship manager, and I was like the person I was like the chief promoter, right, of my startup. So I had to do everything. So if you're in a startup, it's very likely that you will have to take on more tasks
Mhm.
and roles. So if you're like a full stack person that can do everything from 3D modeling to coding to pushing out the product, then that's great, right? That's something that you would want to focus on. But definitely the bigger companies will segment a lot of those things out. There will be a dedicated 3D modeler, there will be a dedicated developer, there will be a dedicated UX designer and a dedicated UI designer. So I think this question really is just depends on what kind of role you're looking for, right? Do you know where you want to work after this? How big is the company? um, if it's a big company, you can reasonably expect that they've already broken down everything that you've talked about into their own specialized individual roles.
Yeah, I can second that, Brian. When I was an apprentice, small company, about 20 people, half were tech, half were sales, right? Or half were product, half were sales. I had to do everything. I was the lead UX researcher. I was the product manager. I was the interaction designer, the UI designer, the 3D designer, right? Um, at the same time, even at large corporations, you have to be able to do it all, right? You have to be able to do information architecture, do interaction design, interface design, and 3D design, right? And the better that you can do all of them, the better designer it makes you, right? The better AR or VR spatial designer it makes you. And your backgrounds from architecture or animation, 3D modeling all apply, but you have to make it a human experience, right? It's a human experience. It's based on human factors, and then it can be a digital experience, an augmented experience, or a virtual experience. But at its core, it's a human experience. And those kind of deliverables are what will stand the test of time because it shows your thinking process, right? So your sketches, they have to be as top notch as your illustrations, right? Because whatever cool UI style you do now is out of style next year, right? So that hardcore interaction design documentation, those deliverables have the staying power. And
Yeah.
even, or especially right now, these roles for augmented virtual reality, they don't have very defined roles. So you have to be able to do everything. And yes, by being able to do everything, then you can lean on other people or other departments to further the 3D design or further the modeling or the animation or the shaders or what have you. So you have to know how all of it's done and have a capability to do it.
Yeah. So I think this goes back to like that T-shaped specialization that everyone keeps talking about these days, where your skill set is a T, everything, the whole process, but you specialize in one thing. So yeah, I mean, like for me, just to give an example, knowing print, print media design like allowed me to understand the nuances between print design and digital design and what not to do for print that is very specific to digital and what I should be doing in digital that I do differently in print. And I understand the differences. For example, I would say like CMYK and RGB, when you're designing for web, always use RGB because that is just how computers and screens are emitting light, whereas print is like they're overlaying the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So like knowing even like very simple things from an industry that you came from is like can be very helpful. And it's like and you'll definitely be able to find a way to like spin that to your advantage.
Yeah, the base of what you have to know has increased.
Yeah.
All right.
And
great.
it will continue increasing. For
sure. It's only getting bigger. For any further questions, class, let's roll it into your presentations. We have about, 5 or 6 projects to review. Up first, we have Kyle. Kyle, do you feel like your internet is, I'll screen share and then give us the elevator pitch, okay?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think a lot of things are out there now in AR and VR things, but I think it's still not the mainstream right now. So which one do you think is more feasibility at this point? And what do you think which one gonna like dominate between like AR and VR technology things?
Oh, good question. No one can say for certain, but I think people much smarter than I are forecasting that AR will take the lion's share of the revenue in the future. Right now, both technologies are very prevalent in more so enterprise applications. I think in the consumer side, it's still trying to find a good footing. Obviously, Facebook and Oculus have a huge amount of money to pour into the VR space to sell these Oculus devices. AR is very popular in the terms of like Instagram and Snapchat filters. So unfortunately, I don't think you can make money by being a popular creator on those platforms, but it's definitely, a very popular segment of the industry. VR has also been really popular in enterprise for like training purposes because it reduces the cost of training by so much by placing people into virtual requirements as opposed to like if you're learning how to like spray paint a car door in an industrial setting, it's so much easier to not have to spend money on paint, car doors, and safety equipment when you can just use this computer and a specially designed controller to do it. So you're finding a lot in VR in the enterprise setting, huge cost savings in like training. So if you wanted to go into VR tomorrow, I would definitely look more into like enterprise applications. AR, I would probably think that like the big growth area is marketing and visualization in terms of like retail and shopping. AR is seeing a really, really big growth in that area. So that's what I would suggest if you wanted to get a job like tomorrow in VR and AR.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
No
problem.
I can only agree with what Brian says. That's kind of how my career path has been recently as well. One thing about AR and VR, your question, Rock, about which one's better, eventually they'll be just different modes, right? And you can view content in AR or VR. Some stats that you can dig into on your own, Shopify, they tout their augmented reality capabilities increases sales by X and X percent, right? By a lot. So check out Shopify for AR. They have some stats in a white paper that they've circulated. It can increase conversion a lot, right? That's like working at the marketing and also market level, right? Creating a market that is augmented reality. And then VR, on the other hand, like Brian mentions, if you want to work in VR that's outside of games, it's really enterprise, right? Training is a big market. The other area is games, right? So Facebook made a lot of money from non-ad revenue, and a lot of that is coming from Oculus. So there's in-app sales, right? Those are mostly games or new forms of story living content, but those are sort of the old media formats in the new method, right? And as we get into the next exercise, which I think Kyle has already taken a peek at, that's where we get new rules for interaction, how far you place UI from the user, how the user can interact with content, with controllers, with their hands, etc. Cool. Kyle, you ready to take over and share a little bit about your work here? Give us the elevator pitch and then we can dive in deeper.
All right, sure. So hello again. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is from the first week. I made these hands in Cinema 4D and brought it into Web AR. Just rotation, the hands just rotate. And then this week, man, this internet is awful.
Hey, we still got you clear. Go ahead.
Okay, good. It's making me worried because it's like glitching for me on the screen. So these are all my ideas I came across, I just wrote down.
All right, and which concept are you favoring?
Oh,
Windshield.
if you scroll down, it shows.
Okay, this guy here.
Yeah, so I picked those. I kind of just wrote those out, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And then I kind of broke down my documentation. So I made a semi logo in Cinema 4D. Then I brought it into what is it called? GLP? Is that what it's called?
GLTF. You made a GLTF.
And then I started playing around. Yes. But for some reason, the materials did not want to import or export. So that's why it's like plain. So I just started playing around. What I really wanted to do was make like an interactive shirt or animated shirt. So I like Star Wars, so I started playing around with poly Star Wars stuff, and yeah, I put videos at the bottom. I'm not sure how far you are because it looks like it's glitching.
So what are you showing us here in these different scenes?
Okay, so it basically like my process of like, oh, I got here, let's go to the next and see what I could do. The circles, I was playing around, I was thinking of something like psychedelic, like lose you in trance, and then I just took it off. I thought it was too distracting. And then I just played with the polys, and it just come out at you. And my most difficult part was trying to make it flat, so it looked like it's on a t-shirt.
Okay, so this final video shows this video shows because I'm scrolling through these, I'm like, okay, a lot of process, a lot of ideas, but the
last one is what it should look like.
The t-shirt is what you're augmenting. That's the flat touch point you're augmenting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I use my iPad as like a t-shirt of like the icon, and it should just.
And what does it say? Is this your name?
Yes.
Okay.
So I was thinking, you know how like Supreme and Nike would have like that little logo? I was thinking, so I made like a temporary one. I used my name, and it just used that and animated it. And it all just comes out. It was quite difficult. I'm not sure if I want to continue this one.
Yeah.
But it was a good learning curve.
Why is that? Why do you say that?
Converting it from what's it called? Is it VR when it's all flat and they don't have the camera?
Mm-hmm.
Or Web AR? And then when I convert it to make it work with the camera and the marker, I had to reposition everything and change the angles. And that was actually a major headache. So unless there's an easier way for me to do that,
Okay.
I don't want to deal with it.
That's
again.
fair. That's fair. So Brian, as a little background, the working method has been to compose your scene in VR and then have a second scene in AR. I can see why that's troublesome. It's a good way to compose and to see how everything lays out. Today, I'll show you how to set a camera back so you can see where everything lands and you don't have to move them forward. I have, you don't need to go from VR to AR if you're just having a QR code straight on the shirt, right? Or when we get to Spark AR, you could use image recognition, right? Recognize the logo and then pop something. Brian, what are your thoughts about augmenting clothing?
I think it's really cool. I think it almost reminds me of something that I saw like maybe a year or so ago. Like I think there's been really popular trends with light up clothing, like clothing that lights up. So it reminds me a little bit about that. But I think one of the cool things about augmented clothing, besides, it's like a fun marketing ploy, marketing experience. I think it would be really cool for events, or even just limited time things. I mean, it adds a huge element of customization to it if you're doing it yourself, right? You can change whatever you want for your shirt anytime. I think it's cool. I think it's got some definitely marketing and branding potential, which I understand is your focus.
Yeah, that's a good point, Brian. I didn't even think about users being able to remix their own individual clothing or make something that's mass manufactured theirs. Kyle, my thoughts here are for augmenting a flat touch point, whether it's a remote control or some physical signage. I'm not sure if shirts are the thing. To me, that might seem more like the tag on the shirt. That doesn't mean you can't do this. I just think if you're augmenting clothing, maybe image recognition, or what I'm saying is a different platform other than web might be better, right? At the same time, what I'd love for you to do is, are you familiar with fashion design or what you should be able to do is you should be able to augment the clothing physically, right? Whether that's using an iron-on sticker or a marker, or just use image recognition to take a photo of the shirt, and then that is your marker, right? Because you have to be able to test how big can the marker be? Can the marker be this whole thing? And probably not, because look, the shirt's not flat anymore, right? Maybe it's just this logo, right? A small logo. So think about that, and those are the design documentations that show your proficiency and how you understand humans, the real world, and the ability to appropriately select an anchor. Cool. Thank you, Kyle. And thank you for presenting on
quick question.
Yes.
Of course. Is there a way to fix the bugginess? I've had also a lot of problems trying to just have it projected on the code, and it would then, for some reason, separate.
What do you mean separate?
Like you would have the code here, pretend I have the code here, and then it would just, for some reason, get off it. And it's not animated. It's just for some reason. I have the video, but it was going to take an hour to upload, so I didn't upload it.
Sure. A couple things. One is, so we call that drift, right? Even in mobile AR at the app level, the AR could drift away, right? Two things. One, it's the quality of the image. When you're on the using your iPad, right? You see how this reflects. So it's not the same. It's not perceived as the same to the camera every time, right? So using a physical marker is better. You remove some of that noise. And the second is in the code, there is something that says tracking method, right? So that tracking method can be good, better, or best. And take a look at that in the code if you have, where's your project site? Double check in the code if you have tracking equals good, better, or best. Take a peek at that. And
you're looking for my glitch code?
yeah, no, what the check in the,
Ish.
so let me pull up your code. We'll do more of this after Brian takes off, because I want to be respectful
That's
of his time.
that's
No worries.
But
that's
I'll add another thing as well.
please.
The difference between why the physical target, a printed target, is good is because it's absorbing light. It's really difficult for screens and cameras because screens are emitting light, and light, as we know, can sometimes like refract differently through the camera lens. So having that flat target that just absorbs light means the variations when you're like moving around will be different, because sometimes you'll move your electronic device, your iPad, a certain way, and it emits light a certain way, and it like confuses the camera. So yeah, that could definitely be like a big reason like the drift can be so prominent. I know it's 2020 and it's like no one owns a printer, so I understand where you're coming from as well.
Yeah, it is a good point. I definitely have to try to print it. I also sent you the link to glitch
Thanks.
in the chat.
I pulled that up here. I think one thing you want to look for is, so I don't know if I pulled up the same one. One thing you want to look for is tracking method equals. So you can have, remember when we added embed ARJS, you can add equals tracking method best, right? And that gives you the option between good, better, or best. That's my assumption. And those are probably 3 different methods of tracking. Which one are we here? Index?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Embed, see, so in this line, in line 13, you want to add within the quotes tracking method equals best. That's one tip.
Okay, I'll definitely do that.
Cool. Thank you, Kyle. All right, up next, we have Aileen and Aileen, I'll let you present.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Aileen.
Okay. So I'll just send also my glitch just in case, and my link if you guys want to follow along. But anyways, I'm going to share everything on here. So basically, I was last time just figuring out how to deal with everything. Do you see this? Yeah. What do you guys see?
Yes, we could see it. Did
Oh.
you switch sharing?
Yeah.
Great, we got it.
The screen, yeah. Okay. So I was really inspired from the introduction presentation that Sam gave us about there was an AirPod, sorry, and this guy put like a buy button. So I was thinking, I have this Aveeno that I use for dry skin. So I was thinking they have anyways those little QR codes at the bottom. So I was thinking, why not add anything to add for further purchasing if there's like a product that you already use and you have in your house. So instead of going to various Amazon, Walmart, whatever, and ordering, you would want to see maybe what's the best price. And I thought also of using a marker for the logo. So here are some previous ideas that I did. And this was the initial sketch of showing like different price points and logos. And then ideally people could tap and then just get directed to the page. I have other ideas here too. I don't know if you want to focus on that. So I worked on the VR experience a lot, and then also came with the same issue that Kyle had with the positioning. So I spent a lot of time after figuring out how to do it, reposition everything on the AR version. But basically I was dealing a lot with text, and I tried doing this with the Vino marker, but it didn't work, so I just went with the Hero. Ideally, I think I would try to print this, just like you guys said before, to reduce all the noise and maybe put it on the bottle. Or in a ideal world, you wouldn't have to do any of that and just scan the bottle and scan the logo itself, not deal with any additional components. But I guess we're not there yet. Yeah, and this is the outcome. So it worked eventually, so I'm happy. And yeah, I was also playing with the animation, and this is this. And also it would be really cool to do that according to location. So everything now is hard coded, but I think, I mean, if you would have more, deal with more like the back end side of pulling things up from Google, or connecting with an API for search and according to your product, obviously that's an option. Yeah, and this is my code. So I sent the link, and yeah, that's pretty much that. I can't hear.
Aileen, can you share the AR demo with us? Do you have a working version that you can screen share with?
You mean this one?
Yeah, what does it look like when you go to the next scene?
Oh, that's the VR version. Yeah, that's the thing.
Okay, so you don't have one that works on the Hero code yet?
Oh, I do. It's oh yeah, it's here. So let's see if that works. I mean, I took pictures of it. Let's see if it, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So the animation doesn't really, it works when I do it on mobile actually, and not through the computer. So you guys can try it if you want. On the mobile, it works really nice with animation. So, yeah.
My only, okay, so here, help me understand this. At home, I could look at the bottle and then figure out what the cheapest price is or what the best price is. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, maybe this is a little bit futuristic, but if you could, like, let's say you have an Aveeno, so you could scan the logo itself. Or if you have, I don't know, Purell or whatever, like you could scan the logo itself, or they have those little like QR codes. But ideally it would work on brands as a whole, like logos, because that's something that doesn't change for a product. Versus QR codes do change and serve a certain link. So
I think this is legit, you know. Aileen's very interested in computer vision and artificial intelligence, machine learning. I think you have some utility here. I'm impressed, Aileen, by how you animated this. And I'm just gonna humble brag right now. I'm gonna steal screen share. Humble brag at Aileen's ability here. One thing that I think is good is how you constructed this UI, right? I mean, I think it's basic. It looks like Post-it notes, but this ability that, you know, you're showing understanding of 2D UI and 3D space. Of course, you could, you know, scale up and then position some of these in a different way. Although we don't expect this to be a VR experience, right? This is sort of the flat screen experience, but
yeah,
before going into AR.
Yeah, I added opacity, so on mobile it works nicely with the opacity as well for those notes.
Cool. Brian, what are your thoughts?
I really like it. I see so much potential in like something like that. You know, I love the fact that I can scan something and I'll be like, oh, it's cheapest from like the CVS 2 blocks away, or maybe Walgreens has it, you know, cheaper like it's slightly more expensive, and it's like, but it's a block away. I think that's really cool. I really like it. And this kind of reminded me of a separate thing, I think, that some people built at the MIT hackathon last year. I don't remember. Time is weird. But they used like very similar to what you're doing, is using the labeling, a consistent image that appears on the labeling to display like additional information. So I think that's good, and obviously for as a consumer facing thing. But I feel like this could actually like be like some sort of like AR platform, like a deal finding platform. I think that's really cool. So I think, like props to that. I think it's a great idea.
I feel also that all of these like things have already been done, or like these ideas are like there. So I don't feel like it's super original.
You don't have to be original. You don't have to be original. You just need to be the best.
That's very true.
It's take the Apple philosophy. You don't have to be first. You just have to do it the best.
Yeah, and that's true. You want to, it's not being the first mover. In some cases, you want to be the last mover, right? So I think that there's some work you can do, certainly in terms of interface, finesse, etc. But not a bad start. Thank you for those animations. Cool. All right, up next we have Vesper. Vesper, would you like to present?
Yeah.
Sam, I'm gonna hop off here.
Okay,
actually,
Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no worries.
Plus, I feel this is a good point for a break. Let's take a 5. But first, everybody, quick round of applause for Brian. And Brian, thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, everyone, for having me. Sam has my contact info, so if you want to get in touch with me, reach out to Sam.
Thank you, Brian.
Cool. All right, take care, everyone. You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Class, thanks. Good behavior, getting a level of professionalism and proficiency. Cool. Vesper, I want you to share next, but let's come back in 5 minutes. I'll be back at 8:07.
Okay.
See you shortly. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. Could you see my?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay. So here's a little bit about my concept from like that last week, and the first one is the public graffiti thing. So I was thinking, so back in the 80s, the New York subway train, it was covered in graffiti, right? I mean, like there was like a lot of opinions and then slogans from different people and artists. It was all covered by that. But now it's like, I think it's illegal for people to spray paint on any public spaces. But I definitely think that's a good idea to let people see like what people really want to say in the public spaces. So this idea was to take the subway train or any kind of like public spaces and turn it into a manifesto plaza. And right here, I did a little bit of experiment to see if it's to how it looks like in AR. I don't know, kind of blurry, but I don't know why it's blurry though. So like it's just like a public graffiti thing. I think it's here. Here you can see the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what physical flat touch point are you augmenting?
Oh no, this one doesn't have any like a physical touch point. I was like physical touch point one was the other one.
Which is the other one?
This one from last week.
Okay. How have you progressed it? Show us this.
So you just point at it and it just like shows up any kind of drinks in 3D module, kind of like that. I don't know why it's like wobbling, but it's not wobbling right now. It's like kind of like shaky.
Okay, you don't have a printer at home?
I don't have one. Actually, I think it works better on the when I use my phone and just like point at it better than I hold it up with my phone. But I can try to. Sometimes
Okay,
it's like
this is a fair point. Who has a printer at home?
I don't have one because the
Okay,
glare. The glare is like breaking it up. Somehow.
Rock is the only one with a printer. All right, that's a fair point. What you have to do to make this digestible, show, like Brian did, and you know, Brian's background is in media, not necessarily art and design. Your documentation has to be super, super crisp, right? So take a step back, right? To wrap up that project, make it very simple, design the information architecture, design the experience, right? You've made the basic experience. Show us, what are you augmenting? Are you augmenting the coaster? Are you augmenting the glass? Are you augmenting the menu? How does the coaster work with an existing glass, right? Is the coaster bigger than the glass? Give us something there that shows the viewer of your portfolio how you understand marker-based and image-based augmented reality. And yes, this is a start to it, right?
Yeah.
But I see you pumped out these sketches, like I'm sure you did 30 of them in like half an hour, right? So give us something like, great, yes, you did the 15, right? Now for marker-based, you're doing the Bloody Mary one. Show your UI, show your UX skills, right? Here's good information architecture, user flow, diagrams of like silhouetted people at a bar, right? Virtual information, like, and then give us, oh, here are different coasters or different codes on the menu. Each can show something. Here's one I made in AR, and then you cap it off like that, right? Good. What's good is that you already have a start on next week's work, right? So this is okay. Like your first portion is a work in progress, but you can cap that off really quickly and pass with flying colors. The idea of graffiti in VR or, you know, painting in VR, that is legit, but we have to take it a step further, right? That's like just a hint of an idea. And I feel like Kyle's kind of got a theme, and Aileen shows she knows, like she has an understanding of composition, right? Which I know we can all do better at, but I'm gonna pause this here. We have, what, an hour and change left, right? Class goes to what time? 9:45. Is anybody else dying to show their work? All right, cool. So let's pull up Glitch, because I need you to follow along here, and we're gonna do some new stuff. Let me pull up this other portion. So how'd you like Brian's introduction about his work, his career path?
So what what exactly does he do, like for his company again? I mean, like,
yeah, sure. Brian just started. He just started at Sogeti or Sogeti, and he's a UX designer, right? They're one of the more tech-focused consultancies, and I think his capabilities in AR and VR got him there. I think he's a great success story because he's someone who found a job over, you know, times that are really tough, right? With everything from immigration to, you know, the visa situation scenario is not easy. So he's shown how if you persist, you can succeed. So something here, quick lecture time for me. Brian mentioned web AR at the operating system, right? We're using A-Frame, but if you saw Google's search on presentation, they shared how you have web AR at the operating system level with Android. There's also AR at the operating system level for iOS, right? There's AR Quick Look, Ar Vr, right? And this experience shows how there was an experience that Apple showed that displays how you can view the objects, and when you move your phone from it in accessibility mode, it reads back to you aardvark off screen, aardvark on screen. And AR Quick Look launched when I was back at Apprentice, so what, 2018 or 2019, summer of 2019, and Apple launched it with the ability to see this computer in your space. So you could go to apple.com on Safari, and then on the product page, you could launch this computer in AR to see how big it is, right? So AR Quick Look is available, and we'll do some exercises with AR Quick Look later. But AR Quick Look and Google Scene Viewer, they're not cross-platform compatible, right? So you still got to build one experience per platform. So it's not really multi-platform yet, like WebAR with 8th Wall or A-Frame is. So keep your mind out for, and your eyes out for WebAR at the operating system. Am I sharing my screen? Yes, okay, cool. Apple launched it with Mac, right? We can export it from Reality Composer, which we're using in one of the final projects. Now, this guy, Andre Cuervo, I don't think it's Andres Cuervo. Andre Cuervo, he's at Movable Type. I follow him on Twitter. Check out this link. He shows how in this link coming from, let me Slack this back to you guys. Where's the chat? Can somebody chat at me? Oh, here, chat. Start a new chat. Andre shows how, where's our chat button? Here, chat. Chats. Oh man. All right, let me get this back to you afterwards. He shows how you can have, in this project, he shows his logo. So Kyle, this is kind of like you, right? He shows how with his logo, you can view the logo in 3D, right, in VR, and then you can launch it in AR. So here's his logo. On click, it's gonna say this, and it just downloaded this file for me. But this file on an iPhone, right, not an Android, but an iPhone, it would show you this. Where did this go? It shows you this object, which is 3-dimensional, right? And then you can view that in AR, right? Now I'm viewing it natively on the Mac because it's a USDZ. You'd view that in AR on the iPhone if I just airdrop this to you. So I did the same exercise, in fact, and I threw my logo in, I extruded it, threw it in USDZ. You can view it on iOS, right? He's done something cool that takes us from A-frame, right? This is all A-frame, a scene, a logo or a GLTF logo. The source is logo, which is in the asset management system, has some scale, right? Event set click, camera, right? And then that takes him to, on this click, it takes you to that USDZ. So that's a quick introduction there to here, Andres Cuervo, software engineer. He's also a UX designer. He's somewhere in Brooklyn, I think at Movable Inc. All right, now news, right? Google, they launched Cloud Anchors, right? I mentioned that last week. This is pretty new, Google Cloud Anchors, okay? It's literally under news 1 week ago. That's the ability to have, enables shareable experiences, so you could both play a game when you're next to each other. Some of these images are old, but the news is that it's now available for longer than 24 hours. So when you're outside the coffee shop, you can see information over the coffee shop, et cetera, right? And this is what a lot of people think augmented reality is. So it is finally here. So check that out. That'll be in the recap. iPhone launched with LiDAR. Do you guys and girls know what LiDAR is? LiDAR initially stood for laser radar, but then they said, okay, let's call it light detection and ranging. It is infrared that is sent out and scanned, and that brings back a map of the world. That's slightly different than the time of flight cameras, which are also infrared, and those just shoot out one beam of light, bounces back. Okay, how far is that thing? And that is, time of flight is one single laser versus LiDAR, which is scanning many lasers. What's better? Many lasers are better than one laser, obviously, right? So LiDAR gives you a picture of the world. It is known from self-driving cars. They are now also available on the iPad Pro 12 and the iPhone, or the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPad Pro. That gives you faster tracking and localization. There are a couple apps that were announced in the recent Apple iPhone launch. One of them is Jig Space. So check these out because these have good design rules, even the way that they are composing their UI. Some things are good, some things are not, right? You should evaluate that. There's also Canvas AR, which was featured on the Apple announcement as well. That's more about Canvas Room AR. That is not any of these images, but they were on Twitter saying that, oh yes, it's by Occipital. Now Occipital in particular is a company that they made a sensor for the back of the iPad, the Occipital scanner. So at the R Lab, we'd scan people with this because it was infrared on the back of the on the back of the iPad. So it's similar to the infrared on the front, right? Which gets you a map of your face. So we'd use this to scan people and animate them at the R Lab. So if we look at Canvas, Occipital, iPhone, right? They now have something on the iPhone that lets you, scan your room or what have you. So that's another company. Those are all new or recently featured. Up next week, Unity for Humanity. So if you are, closing some tabs, if you're interested in game engine development or VR, really take a look at Unity for Humanity. Malcolm Gladwell, he's a good writer. He's the keynote speaker. What's unique about this event is that it's not just tech focused, right? It's about humanity, right? And the recent class I launched, a class I taught before this at the R Lab, is human-centered design for AR and VR. I don't think they copied me. I just think that we see in technology there needs to be an emphasis on humans. So sign up for this, attend some of these sessions. They're not all super deep tech. Unity just IPO'd. They're now a public company traded on the stock market. They need to do more in addition to helping developers, but what are developers? They're not just engineers, right? We're all, in a sense, developers. Now, other news, Oculus Quest 2 launched. So, I do recommend that you have one, whether it's an Oculus or Oculus Quest, like the Quest 1, the Quest 2, it'll just give you a better understanding of the experiences. It's not a requirement, but if you bug me to get in this class because you say you're really gung-ho on this, I'm like, yeah, get it, I wish we were together. We could try or share devices, but you don't want to be sharing space, let alone head-mounted displays. Okay, Cool. So that brings us here to WebVR. With the launch of this little bad boy to create WebVR, in this week and next week, you'll learn how to create WebVR in A-Frame. I'm glad to see that everyone who presented already has a step forward in this world. So you're going to use WebVR to create a head-mounted display experience. Even if you don't have a head-mounted display, it's great that you shot your work landscape mode on the iPhone to show on your portfolio, yes, I can create VR. Oh, I don't happen to have a headset, but that's okay. I can do more than most employers can, right? So good, they'll be coming to look to you for answers. Now, you'll also learn how to customize the controls and enable hand tracking. That's more of an advanced mode. Our agenda, great. Guest lecture, homework share, good, good. Homework troubleshooting, Kyle got a piece for implementing AR tracking equals best. All right, in this workshop, I'm gonna want you to simultaneously share your screen if you don't have a good grasp of the tech. And even if you do have a good grasp, you should share your screen so that way people can copy you, right? Like one of the best things about being in design school or about working at a big place like RGA is walking around the computer lab or walking around another group. You see what other people are working on. Oh, how'd you create that? And you get to learn things that way. We kind of miss that when we're remote. But don't worry, you don't have to share your whole desktop. Just share one, because you might have, I know we're all always multitasking. Share your main window that you're working in. You have to view the Ready Player One trailer. Ready Player One shows us, what the world is like if it's so bad that you just want to hide and be in VR. What we're creating in this exercise, I'm glad to see that, Kyle and Vesper already have a good start at it, is you're creating a new world, right? If you start the Oculus up, you have a home scene, right? In your home scene, you can change your home scene, kind of like Zoom. Do you want to have the North Arctic home scene? Do you want to have the, bookshelf study, like the library home scene, right? But we're not just coming up with a VR start experience. That is the quintessential start experience, right? An environment with UI panels that you can select from. But it's not just a menu. Your physical home, your physical environment becomes the home scene, right? So your assignment is to create the starting experience and an app, right? What is it like for the new operating system? That can be AR or VR, I don't care. They're the same thing, right? They're different modes, full screen, minimize, portrait, landscape. So what is it like to be in your home, and in your home, you can just throw up your hand or say, launch a new app, show my favorites, and then you get, hey, here are your favorite applications. Or you could say, start my work routine. Oh, here are your stocks, here's your inbox, here's, the latest news, right? What is that first morning like? And here's a good example of what I mean. Remember we looked at the Google Daydream sticker sheet? Not these ones. Daydream VR sticker sheet, yeah. So the Google Daydream VR sticker sheet shows how you can have a launch experience. It's like this guy. How you can have a launch experience, right? You want to launch your apps, right? This back here shows, oh, here are different apps. Google Street View, racing cars, Flappy Bird. Here are your other apps, right? Main apps, secondary apps. That's what we used to create, right? Really looked like this. In fact, this is the exact, we have this asset file, main apps, secondary apps. And so this is what it would be like to start VR with the old school VR, where you would put your phone inside it and you had a controller that only knew rotation. It didn't know your hand position. And that's good, because once you get into the app, you might want to just display information in an easy, digestible manner, right? Like, what are my, main apps? What are my secondary apps? Like launching Creative Suite, right? Photoshop, Illustrator, Adobe XD, Lightroom, Bridge, whatever, right? Like the the et cetera, et cetera. And then some tertiary controls. This is what we used to create in class. Technology has advanced so much in the past 3 years since I started teaching this, we have to create something totally different. What we're creating, excuse whatever's showing up here, is Magic Leap Day. Day in the life of Magic Leap. What is this thing called? Here. This is it. Waking up with mixed reality. This shows Magic Leap. It's not a hype reel. This is all shot within the Magic Leap. This is probably just a Unity prototype. Things that you can do in A-frame. This person wakes up, they can see their notifications, they can see the
We can't hear you.
And I'm back. Do you hear me? Cool. So this shows the to-do list. This shows the weather. And this weather it's a widget. It's an app, right? So immediately you have multiple apps showing information to you right here, right? I think this is all just made in Unity and then played at a sequence, right? What are my stocks? So think about when you wake up, right? Whatever point of the day you want to have your experience. It's when you wake up, when you start your design sessions for the day, when you wind down. All these apps can live around you, right? So what is it like in your home to have different apps, different widgets, right? You can have a weather widget, you can have the time widget, like my family lives in multiple different places, show me all the time zones, or show me a globe of where my family is, right? Or where my friends are, right? Show me like what games my friends are playing. Maybe my favorite game is maybe like AR table tennis, right? And that sits a little tennis court, above my kitchen table or something, right? So think of again, buying shoes. For some reason, somehow, shoes are the holy grail of augmented and virtual reality. It's like whoever really cracks displaying and selling shoes in AR and VR, you're going to get it, right? You will be set. But that's the case for everything and anything, right? There's so much opportunity. Even speaking to the chief experience officer of Magic Leap, he used to work at RGA. He left RGA to go to Magic Leap back when Magic Leap was on top and when RGA was doing all right. And I saw him, even though he'd left RGA, he left RGA London, he went to RGA New York because Magic Leap was the RGA client. And I saw the guy. I'm like, oh, isn't that the guy in the press release who just left? And I look up his name and look up his LinkedIn. I'm like, yeah, that's the guy. I catch him as he's leaving the office of the content studio. I'm like, oh, are you James? He's like, yeah, I'm Sam. Trade numbers. He's like, what's up? I may need help. But I said, what do you think a good opportunity for AR is, right? The same thing you guys ask me every day or every time you present, right? But this is the same thing clients ask each other, right? I was at one time, not too long ago, that snarky little kid asking, what's a good use case, right? Not snarkily asking, but honestly and earnestly asking. And he says, there's so much opportunity from everything from weather to clock, right? Just think about that. Remember, you don't remember, but when the iPhone came out, it was like, oh, here's an app that lets you look like you're drinking a beer. And that app sold so much, right? Or here's an app that lets you find a toilet nearby. That sold so much, right? But understand there are different kind of ways you can display the closed state of an application. The closed state of an application can be flat, like a calendar. That's probably flat, right? Maybe not if you're trying to display it in a different way. I think a calendar would be flat. If there's Google Earth, the closed state of Google Earth, it's not going to be like a little flat icon on your menu bar. You don't have a menu bar, right? Like your desktop comes from the desktop metaphor. We're now at room scale and world scale, right? So even some of these app icons look 3D, right? All the new Apple icons are 3D because we live in a 3D world. Calendar, probably flat when it's closed, right? Google Earth, it's probably a globe when it's closed. Those are just some examples, but 2D, 3D, right? So you're creating a new world where you wake up,
or you start your design studio, and you can augment your whole environment, right? I can kind of see like Kyle's studio is a spaceship. That's right. He's already shown like he likes, the spaceship world, and that's cool. Star Wars. Somebody was asking, the one person that is getting the 10 points, and it's not like there are only 10 points. There are 10 points available for everybody, and you should get the 10 points. Otherwise, you get 0 out of 10. Somebody asked, like, oh, what's the difference between AR versus holograms? Like, aren't holograms better? Well, really, there is Sony Spatial Display. I used to think that they were the same thing, right? And I showed you some of the early work I did. I thought projection mapping was augmented reality. And yes, you could argue that it is. Like, we're not here to argue, just here to understand the technical capabilities and the benefit of each technology. There's something called, volumetric displays, right? This is from Sony. This just came out today. But this is similar to, so this is a volumetric display, right? Or it's a holographic display. They call it a spatial reality display, but it's really not spatial because it's only in that one space. It can display another space, but it is only in that one space, right? It's similar to the Looking Glass. The Looking Glass comes from Brooklyn. It's a holographic display. It changes the display based on where you are. You can even use your hand, and then you can like pick this Firefox or this little bear up in your hand. But the thing stays there, right? The virtual object stays within the bounds of that physical prism. Even if it's projection mapping, this can only serve one person at a time, right? The projection displays the same thing to you and me. So can you see these, right? If the projection is like this logo, right? If I am a canvas and the projector or the holographic display displays this logo, it can only change angles to one person. When there are two people, it would break. So even if you could use a projection, you will still need a personal device. That's why AR and VR are the answer. Okay, so when we look at science fiction, and there's a good talk that you should watch by Graham Devine, he has a series of talks. When you look at science fiction, the answer, AR, VR, AR versus holograms, are they different? Are they the same? You know what the difference is. AR technology is designed to serve an individual, but by serving an individual, you can still serve multiple people, right? If Kyle and I are in the same place, we could see a virtual Firefox, right? The red panda. And we could see it in the same way, or we could see them in ways that are different or unique to us. Projection mapping and holographic displays or volumetric displays cannot do that. There are other methods for holograms. Pepper's Ghost is a common one. And Pepper's Ghost is in fact used to make some augmented reality glasses, right? How does this work? The person stands beneath the stage. There is a piece of glass here that when you shine a light on them, reflects, so the audience sees, oh, it looks like a ghost, right? And so that's the way some basic AR headsets work, right? Here's the phone reflects into the glass, it shines into your eye, right? But your audience is in one way, right? Your audience can't walk around the thing. There's a secondary method that uses like fog and then puts lasers through the fog. That's cool, but still, like, you can't customize the perspective. So that's how they're different, okay? Now, from sci-fi, and sci-fi kind of leads the way, right? Everything from Star Trek having the like smartwatch to the PDAs, et cetera, all that stuff exists now. But the one thing that all sci-fi films do that is wrong is they all show the future of telepresence and communication as flat displays. And that's not the way that it works, right? Like from the Sony and the Brooklyn Looking Glass displays, those are flat but volumetric, to augmented and virtual reality. Every sci-fi thing has got it wrong. Even if I just Google Star Trek and Star Trek is seen as in some ways predicting the future, right? Star Trek display. These are, whether you look at the original Star Trek or the more recent ones, it's all flat screens, right? Even though in Star Trek they claim they can beam you up, right? They can like turn you into atoms and then send you back via like Wi-Fi to the spaceship, right? If you can send physical people up and down, why are all the displays flat? So all the sci-fi films do that except for one. And which one is that? Kyle, you should know the answer. Take a guess.
Repeat it?
Take a
Repeat
guess.
the question.
Oh, I was low audio. You can hear me? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, my headphones kicked out. Okay,
No, it's kicked out.
What's that? You
Yeah.
can't hear me?
And now we
Okay, now you can. Thank you, Aileen. Kyle, what's your guess?
What was the question?
Did you
I
not
didn't
hear me for the
you.
past like 5 minutes?
For me, it's cutting out in and out.
Okay, so it's both of us. All right, what I'm saying is that all sci-fi films, even though that you heard that part, right? Sci-fi films predict the future,
Mhm.
right? Everything from mobile phones to PDA, like watches, smart watches. But Star Trek, right? All the displays from the recent movies to the old films have flat screens to project, right? They're all flat screens. Great furniture, but flat screens, okay? Even though in Star Trek they claim they can beam people up, right? Like they can take the physical atoms of my body and send them up to the spaceship. They're still showing that their interfaces are flat screens. And that is not what the world is working towards. There's only one multi-episode, multi-series, multi-saga epic that displays everything canonically in three-dimensional holographic format. What world and universe is that from?
Star Wars? Oh no.
Yes, yes, exactly. Star Wars. Okay.
Okay. I'm like,
Star
oh,
Wars.
okay.
Okay, wow.
Yes, Star Wars, right? Everything
Okay.
from everything. It's all holograms, right? This is the one from the chess game that they play where you never want to beat a Wookiee, right? Always let the Wookiee win, to the first scene, right? It's all holograms, okay? Now, what's funny about this is that the way they show the degrading of the information, it's through scan lines, right? But that's because TVs would have scan lines, right? We know that there are different things, right? Now, like our voices get, choppy, we get pixelated, we get data moshing, right? Like when you try and stream a video, right? So that's what no series has gotten right, but this is the one series the one universe that does show things as they kind of are. And that's really funny because that's where we are headed. All right, cool. So now let's get into the holographic world. Where did I put our curriculum? Okay, so watch a couple of these videos. Star Wars is the answer there. They will be distorted not with scan lines. Holograms will be distorted with data loss, data moshing, pixelation, and like voxelation, right? Voxels, right? Cubes, because we're not with pixels anymore. Okay, here's what we used to create. We used to create similar to the Daydream start experience, right? Which is very similar to the Oculus start menu. If you open up the Oculus, it's got main apps, secondary apps, right? Now the Oculus has something that is Oculus menu. Now the Oculus has something that's a little bit different, right? This is their new menu, right? And it's much closer. It's in front of you.
They do use
So
like 2D screens for things.
Sorry, go ahead.
They do use then like 2D screens for these things.
Yes, they use 2D screens for these because when you select the app, then your app is 3D, right? But what would every app want, right? Well, okay, this shooting game, it's based in a canoe. This one is based on music. and this one is, you know, Beat Saber based on music. What they would love for, because every brand loves to like how can we get deeper at, you know, when the iPhone launched, Sprint said you have to add a Sprint button to the phone, and then Steve Jobs said we'll add the button later, and they said you can't add the button later. How are you gonna add the button later? Oh, guess what? Like, you can add buttons on the phone. That was the groundbreaker, right? So what every app would love is, how can we have a little start vignette for Beat Saber, right? With like two lightsabers crossed, or how, like, as the music game, how can we show music playing, right? That's what, yes, that is what you should design. That is what you're going to design and create, right? In my room, right, I'd love for the whiteboard app to be like a marker just slowly spinning that I could grab, and then plop, whiteboard pops up, right? So you're creating your home scene, and then you're creating the interactive scene, right? Whether you pick up the whiteboard experience, or whether you put on the, you know, you put on the headphones to go into your music visualization world. What I'm showing you here is the evolution in technology. You remember when I showed you Daydream start screen? The Daydream start screen is the Daydream start screen, right? Which we used to create. Everything's very far. It's 2.5 meters in front of you, because that's where your eyes will focus. Now, why is the Oculus menu like this? The Oculus menu, the Oculus Quest menu, this is the new menu. And you can see, even if you toggle between these, this shows, this is not the Quest menu. This shows how you can have, here is one menu, okay? Here is a second menu, and then in the background is a third menu, okay? So they have these three different planes. One is really close to you that you can almost reach out and touch it. The second is there with secondary information, and the third is bigger and further away, right? That's just a quick note on how the interfaces have adjusted. What these interfaces are going to, right, even though we can create the first generation and simply the second one, you're creating the fourth one, okay? You're going ahead of the curve. Microsoft has shown, this experience on HoloLens, right? So if you have a HoloLens, you can download this experience and get an understanding of the different basics of spatial meshing, spatial awareness, right? But this little cube can be an app sitting on top of my desk or sitting on top of my nightstand. And that could be any app, right? So the apps are no longer going to just be 2D and flat. If you put the HoloLens on, your apps are three-dimensional. The closed state is three-dimensional, right? So you have to design for that world. And at the same time, even just in VR, Facebook Horizon is showing you the ability to create worlds, right? This is multi-user social VR. So this is what you're creating, right? Microsoft has a VR design tool called Maquette. In Maquette, you can design for AR and VR spatial experiences while you're in VR. I think some of your Cinema 4D skills or Blender skills are already as good as whatever Maquette could do, and faster, because you have multi-touch input on your computer with your mouse, which you don't really have with VR. Maquette's not that great because it lacks the basic fundamentals of things like snapping, of duplicate, of grid, right? But here people are showing, oh, this is what Microsoft shows. This could be your stock market app that is in a closed state, right? This could be your weather app, right? So think about these, okay? Now, as we jump into this, you're gonna create, you're creating the start scene, right? Here's my basic start scene. I was like, oh, you're gonna be like space boxing. So your objective is you can, you know, punch with your controller, you know, punch the blue ones with your left controller, punch the right ones with your red ones with your right controller, you know, dodge these other ones. You have multiple rounds. You could switch your environmental level. On the next scene, right? Then you have this basic experience where, you know, you can look at these and then they go away. You can restart this experience, or you can, you know, proceed to the next level, right? In that, that shows start screen to launch an app, and then the in-app experience. What you're going to show is the home scene where you can launch any app, and then one app will have animations and interactions. Okay. So who has questions about that?
Are you gonna send us this? Because we didn't go over like multiple scenes.
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's start with your homework first.
Yeah, we also had that issue with camera while working on these inspectors. So if you have like any idea how to deal with that, that would be great.
Which camera issue? Sorry.
Because we were like working on VR, like designing everything, and then once we plugged it into AR, so now we're doing just VR, right?
Yes. Now we're doing just head-mounted display experience, whether that's VR or AR. What's it like when you wake up in the morning or when you wind down at night? Because your one physical scene can't have multiple scenes, right? So think about your scene-based information architecture. So we're going head-mounted display. You're going to use VR to design VR or head-mounted display AR. Don't worry about the camera. So when you're designing your holograms, be sure to add people in your information architecture. So here's your homework. Design your dream design studio or your dream design apartment, your work, your home. It could be a traveling van, a spaceship, an apartment, a beach house, a tree house, right? That will have applications in it, information in it, calendar, clock, whatever have you, right? And then your second scene will be launching that application, right? So I'm not asking you to design any one use case, which I know was a hiccup in our first project. Like, what is a good use case? Here, we're asking you to design all the applicable applications for an environment, right? So it's not just, okay, what are 15 different AR ideas I could do? What are 15 AR ideas I'd place in my apartment? Like, here's my Netflix, here's my Spotify. What's the app icon for that? What's the close state or what's the running state for that, right? So all the app services experiences you launch in your home or the ones that you launch in your design studio, just pick a place and design from that place, okay? You're designing that home scene, right? Whether that home scene is your home or your office start scene, okay? And you can launch 3D applications, spatial applications from them. I just mentioned this portion. So the first step is you're gonna create your scene-based information architecture. Now, what is that? You ask about information architecture. You usually have your homepage, men's, women's, or categories like shoes, pants, right? In this case, we have the home scene, right? Maybe I have my bedroom, my living room, my kitchen. Those are 3 different scenes, right? I also have my bedroom at 6 a.m. when I wake up, my bedroom at 6 p.m. when I'm off work, right? There should be a transition between those scenes. Those are 2 different scenes, right? Or you can, and then the next thing is here's my start scene, right? 6 a.m. wake up, and then launch application, global news, right? And that second app, that second scene is the second scene you build in VR, okay? And for me, off the top of my head, global news in the morning, it shows me a globe. These are all the major events, it shows me the stocks over here, shows me headlines, right? Swipe, delete, delete all, close application, delete application. I don't want to read the news, right? That's what you're going to come up with. Different scenes with the virtual objects in them. So in whatever format you find, just don't make it rectangles. Why? It's because we are not confined to rectangles. But this is information architecture, okay? So come back with a schematic. Kyle, go ahead.
What's a schematic?
Schematic.
Like a UI term?
It is a deliverable term, right? Here's a schematic. This is a schematic, right? This map is a schematic. This map is also a good example of—
It's like a wireframe.
Similar, but think about it not as the form of the things. Think about it as, did you take interaction design class?
I did not.
Oh, okay, that's all right. Even if you did, some classes at SVA don't teach it. Here is information architecture, right? And this is what you have for websites, apps, home screen, men's, women's, shoes, clothing, right?
Gotcha.
In our case, it's more like NYC's subway map. It's more like the subway map, right? Here are all the different scenes that you could go to, and then go to Union Square subway map. And then your second scene is, this is your second scene. When you zoom in on a scene or when you open a scene, right? It doesn't have to look like architecture because it's not the physical environment that's important. It's the different scenes with the virtual objects in them, okay? So that's your information architecture. Then you're going to design your multiple scenes. Design your scenes from the top-down view, from the side view, and from the first-person view, right? So in my case, for the boxing experience, it'd be like top-down, here's person, here's like punching bag, right? Side view, person, punching bag. What's important there? Oh, the things that you punch should be within arm's distance, right? If you're doing a big screen, like graffiti scene where here's a train, here's a whatever, like, well, maybe you have a new kind of graffiti or something, right? In these, you have to denote what is a virtual object, what is a real object, and then annotate your interactions, right? Your design notes. Just like Brian had, here is the hologram, here's the person, and then here's where the person's looking, and here's where the person's pointer is raycasting. So these will help you get jobs. There are, in the resources, check out some of the quintessential creators. Mike Alger, he has some very good videos and documentation on designing for VR. But that's enough of that. Let's start another glitch project, and we're going to start with, what is this, home VR? Oh yeah, this is the same one. I just remixed this. So let me show you how to, let me show you how I compose this. And the main portions of this are adding a skybox, which I think you already know how to do. I saw Vesper, you added that background. Adding a camera 3 meters back on the Z-axis. I'll change this project to show you why that's important. And then custom stuff, the registry for components like GIFs. I showed you that last time, but I didn't see anybody do it. So I'll walk you through that step by step. Here's this project that you can remix, but I don't want you to, because I want you to create your own. So this has the assets. You're gonna wanna create your own for sure, but check this one out because this shows, in fact, don't use this one at all because it's messy. I made this in a program that outputs a frame, but it adds additional things there. So let's start fresh. I'm gonna go to search for A-frame. When we get A-frame, we get our basic introduction to the A-frame team. You can see some examples. I'm gonna remix this one. We'll call this one start scene. Also chime in with questions anytime. All right, so I'm showing this next to the code.
We don't use asset, like how can I make the object?
How can you make the object?
Yeah, with what tools?
What tools? Sure. Thank you for asking. You have to create custom 3D assets, right? Whether you want to use Cinema 4D, Blender, or what? You seem shocked.
I don't know how to use.
Like,
okay.
I don't know too much how to use those.
Okay. Eileen is the only person I don't believe here. Let's just because I know.
I think you saw me one time, but I dropped that class. So.
So you didn't do my class. You were doing other homework in my class, and then you dropped that class.
No, I actually dropped it after.
Okay.
Because I was taking 6
Let's get there in 30 minutes. Remind me in 30 minutes. Okay. These are the new things that I want to show you. Okay. Adding a camera, getting to the registry. Okay. We have this scene, right? But now if we add a box, right? We don't see the box, right? Even if we say the box color equals, black, right? We should see the box. Now we see the box because it's beneath us, right? Why? Because, you know, participation is part of this, shout it out. Because the box, if you don't give the box a position by default, the box will be at 0, 0, 0, right? Okay, that's why. Now, every time we add an asset here, we have to move it back. And that's been problematic for you when you design in VR and then deploy in AR, right? Here's a trick for those who are still working on their AR project, which I feel is everyone. Well, I know I need to add a camera. So I'm gonna go to A-Frame and I'm gonna search under the documentation for camera, okay? Now, this shows me I can add a camera. All right, cool. I will add a camera. Where am I gonna add a camera? I'm gonna add a camera at the top of the scene. Why? Because your scene-based information architecture should place the person first, virtual objects after. So I'm gonna add a-camera, and I'm gonna close the tag. Now I have a camera, okay? Now, if I give my camera a position of, your camera should have a position. If you don't give it a position, it sets it a default position. Let's give our camera a position of 0, 1.6, and then 0, right? Well, why did I set it at 1.6? That's the y-axis. Somebody shout the answer out. Because the average human person is 1.6 meters tall, okay? Now, we're gonna add something great to this camera. This is a custom camera. I'm gonna change the position of the Z, the camera on the Z-axis to 3. So now the camera is -3 meters back, or the camera is in our coordinate system. The camera, right-hand coordinate system, the camera is 3 meters positive from the 0. So whenever you add a new object, your new object automatically adds 0, right? So if we add a sphere, a-sphere, color equals blue, right? Because I'm going to start making my, you know, my globe, right? Now we can see things, right? So now I can add this box, position equals, we'll change the sphere to be position equals x, y, y will be 1, right? So now we get our globe on a pedestal, right? And then I can even parent all these. I can add a parent. Here's a third thing. I'm gonna add this to the curriculum. Did I show you how you can parent objects? Okay, just like a group, we're gonna make a parent. So here are the new things that we've added, right? They are too big though, for my taste, right? So I'm gonna add a-entity, and I'm gonna close the tag. So now if I take the end tag of the entity and I place it beneath these, we did do this because you put you put all your virtual objects between the marker tags, right? I have put both of these virtual objects, ID equals in the globe, okay? So this parent entity that I identified as globe contains the world and the pedestal, okay? Now, I will give this globe this parent entity because why? The globe entity parents both the sphere and the box. I will give this a scale that equals 0.5, 0.5, 0.5. Now, my globe is all half the size, okay? So I didn't have to make each thing smaller by itself. I put them in a parent and I made them all smaller. Now, similarly, we have that background scene, right? The default A-frame scene. I'll call that a-entity, and I'll give it an ID of A-frame basic, right? Whatever. This could be, your basic app that you want, right? So back here, if I want my boxing game, right? My boxing exercise game, and if you think about, what's a good VR use case? So many are based around exercise, right? So that could be like 2 or 3 little guys that are boxing each other. I don't think you can have 3 people box at the same time. But here, let's call this like scene, diorama. Did I spell that right? I don't think I did. Yeah, I did. So here's what a diorama, I Googled that because I wanted to show you what a diorama is, right? Here, dioramas are these little vignettes, right? You should think about the closed state of some applications as being a little vignette. Like your Google Maps app is probably just a globe, right, with pins on it, right? Your design app or your painting app, it might be like a bucket of paint with a paintbrush in it or something, right? So this diorama, I'm gonna make it its position equals, and I can place this just to the 2 meters to the right, X, Y. I'm gonna bring it closer to me because they are all 5 meters away or 4 meters away. I'm gonna bring them 2 meters closer by placing them 2 on the z-axis, okay? Cool. So now we have these guys, over a little bit closer to us, okay? That just shows how you can parent entities. What's good code practice is to tab in the child entities so you can see what the larger parent entities are. Now, all right, I took you over how to add a camera, right? How to parent entities. Let's look deeper into the camera. What does the camera provide us? Okay, we can add a position. We can add a rig. Here's some other attributes. We can add near clipping planes and you can add field of view. So you can change the field of view. This is cool. I haven't used this before, but if we want to say our camera, where's camera? Camera, always at the top, has a FOV. FOV stands for field of view equals, and let's change this to something really small, 20, to see if it works. All right, wow, now my camera field of view is 20 degrees, right? By default, it should be at 80 degrees. And why is that? I don't know why, but that's probably has to do with the human field of view, right? Human field of view, right? So we have over 220 degrees. I think default might be your flat screen, right? There's another thing that we can adjust the camera far, right? And I think that's how far you can see something. So this shows that we can affect in camera near, the near clipping plane, right? So far shows that you can view objects that are up to 1,000 meters away. And near shows that 0.5, anything within 0.5 will not render. This is very important to understand. Frustrum. The cameras have something called a frustrum. The frustrum is the top of the cone, right? So if you flip this on its side, right, this is the near clipping plane, this is the far clipping plane. The cameras, the AR cameras will only show you virtual information that is within these two planes. So if you put on the Oculus Quest even, but especially if you put on the HoloLens or the Magic Leap, you can only bring virtual information so close to your face. If you bring the information too close to your face, it will not render, okay? So what I'm showing you by using the far clipping plane and the near clipping plane is the ability to design for the HoloLens and Magic Leap, even if you do not have the hardware. You can understand what those limitations and requirements are by reading the documentation, okay? So they're saying the ideal optimal placement is between 1.25 and 5 meters, right? That's what shows, and 2 meters is the suggested distance, because that's where your eyes converge, right? HoloLens has a near field clipping plane of like 60 centimeters. It won't show you anything closer than 60 centimeters, but you can pull that frustrum back. So you can break the rules once you know what the rules are, all right? Now, tangibly, something fun here that you can do is you can add WASD controls, right? Can you add fly? We can add, I'm gonna close this guy out. You can add camera WASD controls enabled equals true, okay? So this gives you the ability to walk around in VR, right? So if you show, right, now you can walk. If I say false, then I cannot walk. I'm pressing the W key. I don't go anywhere, right? So that's true. Now, previous versions of A-frame, you could fly. So, oops, excuse me. With the no dice here, fly can't equal fly. Fly's got to equal true. No dice. But you used to be able to press Q to fly up, Z to fly down. There might still be something cool like that. All right, that's introduction to camera. Remember, the camera is the person and what the person sees. Do you not know how to create a skybox? Do you need me to show you that? Would you like me to show you that? Yes? Okay, cool. So yes? Cool. So I can add a sky, and that sky can have an asset ID. That can be your background. So I'm just copying from A-frame right now. I'm gonna go ahead and add a sky, and that's the second thing I'm gonna load. In fact, here we have our background is a background color. I'm gonna delete that, and I'm just gonna add a-sky. I'm gonna close my sky tags, and then here we can say color equals, let's say yellow, okay? Cool, super yellow. You can also add things like fog, but let's go ahead and add.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How did you do the thing with the boxing that you had like those screens? So how
Great question. We'll get there. Let me give us a background first. You can check out even on so yeah, Aileen, I just added images, PNGs, and then textured those planes. When you search for a sky, it directs you to Flickr, which has an equirectangular photo group. You can also just search for equirectangular or 360 photo, right? Say you want to do like Burning Man VR, excuse me, here's a start to that. Let's download extra large. And if you're looking for royalty-free ones, there are ones from NASA. NASA has a lot of free photos. Just be sure you credit the author if you're using any assets. So I'm gonna just comment in here, Skybox via, this is not the right way to do it. You should put their name, etc., etc. So there you go. This is but you can't steal. You gotta give credit when you do it. I'm gonna drag this image that I downloaded into my assets folder, right? This is the same method that you use to bring in images to texture your 2D UI, okay? Now I'm gonna copy this URL, now that I've clicked it, back on index, right? We're gonna add an asset management system, a-assets, assets plural, and then we're gonna add img equals this, img, what do? img src. So I've forgotten how to code, so I'm gonna check back at my previous experience that I created, which you're happy to dig in. You should feel free to dig into. Yes, first I should give it an ID so I can say organize, and I'm gonna call this background, okay? And then the source, src equals this URL. I still have an error, so I'm gonna hover over here. Oh, I didn't close this tag. I have to close the tag, right? Remember, you just have to close the arrow. The image tags close automatically. If you're adding an asset, right? Like if you're adding this asset that is a GLB, you have to say asset item and then end the asset item tag. So you have to manually add a close tag. These images, look, there is no /img, right? You don't need that because they're images. All right, now I have an image. You don't see the image is loaded, but we have to display that image. So in the sky tag, I'm going to say I think just source, src equals quotation, hashtag or pound, background. So now our our sky, we have a scene, we have a assets. Our assets have an image, right? Now, we have a sky and we have a person, right? Our sky, the source of our sky equals, check out background. What is background? Background, the source for background is that image, okay? Cool. That comes simply from A-frame documentation, and feel free to learn from this project or last year's project, right? Last year's project has some things that we don't need, like this custom camera. Has some further things that we can use. Now, like in here, this is annotated well. This is the background. Some things that you don't need from this, for example, are like material equals color white, flat shading true, opacity. Like, these are all default things. So that project has more information than you need. But feel free to dig deeper if you want. Okay, there's something else that's important for the camera. Aileen, as we lead up to getting to UI, your camera could need a cursor, right? So we can add an A cursor to our camera, right? So within our camera tag, right? Where do we add the cursor? The cursor is going to be a child component of the camera component. So add a dash cursor, right? And here we have a cursor. You see that black ring? That's the cursor. That's the fuse cursor, right? That's what the center of your head-mounted display looks at. Now, we can give it some values like the timeout, does it fuse? By default, that's false. So let's give it, the cursor is going to fuse equals true, right? So now you can, you could do something like on click, that would work, right? Whereas when you look back to my previous project here, we have one of these things is interactive. Which one is interactive? The one that's interactive is, well, this one, animation, start event, click, property, change position, okay? So this thing is the right UI. So if and I can tell it's the right UI because it says, you know, UI right, animation start event. So UI right does not click. But the center button does, okay? So let's see what that center button does. This is an interactive button linking to the next scene, okay? So this button, animation property, right? It has this property and the start event is clicked. I think some of this goes to deeper JavaScript, but let's build some UI in here, okay? Now, I got kind of tired of coding at this point of the day or the night. So look, I'm so tired I can only design, right? Let's go into inspector mode, Control Option Command I, okay? Here's our basic scene. Let's add a floor. So I clicked add, now we have a new entity. I'm gonna add a component here. This component is gonna be geometry, right? Gives me a box. I'm gonna choose a cylinder, and then I'm gonna hit the, I didn't wanna add an extra sphere there, but that's okay. I'm gonna hit the R, that's weird. I'm gonna hit this transform to squash this cylinder and then scale this out, okay? So now maybe we have a floor here, right? Remember, the inspector allows you to add and adjust things, and then I can copy this. So I'm copying this, and I'm gonna give an ID floor, right? So this ID, oh, I think that duplicated it, or did it copy it? Here, copy the floor. That's floor 2. Now back in the A-frame experience, I'm going to add the floor. Where does the floor go? The floor probably goes beneath everything else. That is a little more than we wanted to add. I don't know how that came in. It's a cylinder. That's really funny, isn't it? That makes no sense to me, does it? Make any sense to you? Pardon?
Does it copy with all the attributes that you changed and stuff? Or?
It should not. It should not. But hey, maybe it's doing something different. Let's double check. Okay, this is not exactly what we wanted. I think I copied the wrong thing. This is weird. It has a cylinder and a sphere in there. Remember, I tapped something weird. That's the globe. So I added the sphere below the globe. That's why. I copied the wrong one. This is the one I wanted, right? So here we're showing how you can really iterate in VR. I wanted this floor, right? I wanted my floor to be larger, okay? I'm gonna copy this floor, paste this floor back in here. Cool, so now we have our floor.
But did
right?
you click to go perspective mode? From
Perspective mode,
yeah. What did you click?
click Control, Option, Command, I. This mode is the inspector mode.
Oh, yeah, that
A-frame
one.
inspector. Yeah.
Ah,
So this is the A-frame inspector. And to get to the A-frame inspector, you want to hit, this shows how you can install it. You can hit Control Alt I, okay? On Mac, that is Control Option Command. Thank you for asking. Cool, so I think I keep copying the wrong one, but now here we can add the 2D UI. Let's add, usually I add the UI that is the 3 panels and then the other 3 panels, right? Let's look at this in the inspector, okay? So I'm confident that you know how to create this. I believe you do, because the way you create this is by adding a-plane, right? I'm gonna call this ID equals UI. Then the position for the plane is gonna equal, it's gonna be x0, y 1.6, y, because that's the average height of the human. And then it's already 3 meters away from me, right? Because I place my camera 3 meters back, okay? So we can give this a geometry of, well, I can adjust that later. This gives us like 1 UI, right? Now we can duplicate this UI, give this UI left, and then we can make the position, this will be, 1 meter to the, that should be -1, -1.5, okay? And then if we duplicate this again, we have UI right equals +1.5, okay? So now we start to have, here's our launch screen, right? What else can we do here? We can add textures here. Now, how did I do that? Well, I can see in this experience, right? We have, so this is why you want to code things from scratch and not use too many programs. We have a plane, we have a material, and that material equals, there's a hashtag, card PNG, right? So from using Illustrator or Photoshop, whatever may have you, right? Say you want to get SVA logo PNG. Let's see if this comes in as a PNG. Do we have a nice transparent PNG? Is this guy a PNG? Yes, legit PNG. Drag and drop, logo.png, change the name. Back in our glitch project, drag and drop, copy logo. In the quintessential experience, we used to add the logo above the UI, right? Creating the branded experience. People came to RGA to learn how to do this, right? And logos, branding, super important. This is a project we're working on. We added the asset here. Again, copying the URL. Back in the index, we're gonna add an asset here. IMG ID equals logo PNG. Source equals, and I just called it logo PNG. That way I know to differentiate it from a rectangle that I call logo, right? All right, for this plane, for these UI planes, right? Say we want them all to be the same, which we don't. Oh, I'm getting a little OCD here. Okay, all right. Then here the material equals equals, how do we do this? Back here we did material equals source colon, okay? So that's a little bit different. This is how we texture material. Material equals source colon, and then this is, what do they call it, logo PNG, right? Or whatever file name you call that. Great, now we have the asset textured onto our geometry. Did you see that, Aileen? Aileen, here, we added, I know you'll figure out how to do this. We textured a basic object. Now, similarly, if we want to get super into branding, right? Like, say we have globe, right? You know, we have a globe. I can give this material, material equals source colon hashtag logo PNG. And then we should have, I think I need a space in here. Dice, this should work. Material. Oh, you know why this doesn't work? Because this ID, the globe, I'll call it globe set, right? It has no material to it. It has nothing to it. It's just a parent. It's really the sphere that I wanted to add the material to. So now the sphere has this material, right? Now you can see so you can texture other things. You could literally, I could texture the sphere background, right? So now here we have, you see this, the sphere that we added is, has the texture of the environment. So you can make these little different worlds floating around your world, right? That gets a little meta, doesn't it? All right, now what else do we have? This UI, okay? We can adjust the opacity here. So maybe we can do semicolon opacity colon 0.9. There. Now it begins to look like augmented reality, right? So what do we have? We have our entity component system. This entity is a plane, right? Now, this plane entity has a component that is material. What does the material component have? The material component has a opacity attribute to it, right? We can also add another attribute that is color. And this color can be whatever this hex value is here. So then now we should have maybe that doesn't work. But you can check out further examples here. I love how this one thing keeps changing color every time. You can check out further attributes like metalness, roughness, right? Repeat, okay? So that way you could create a tiled floor if you wanted to, right? Let's just copy these other attributes in. So here we can do, this doesn't change much for us. Metallic, like if you go 1, like now it looks darker, but that's because metallic should show how shiny something is. Like metalness, maybe I want to take metalness to this globe, right? This globe where we have a spherical image around the material. We can change the metalness there, and now it starts to look shiny, okay? So your materials have multiple attributes. Your material is a component, and that component can have how metallic it is, what image it is, how opaque it is, right? So here we can add opacity also equals 0.9, right? Now you can slightly see through the sphere, okay? So you could have the fog around the globe. All right, showing that you can also repeat materials here, 22 by 1. You see those grids? That is 22 SVA logos back there, okay? It's probably not how you want your UI, but you could do 2 by 2, right? Now I have 4 SVA logos. What that's showing you is how you can create a floor and literally tile your floor. We don't really need to repeat this. I'll pull that back. I'll also pull metallic and roughness back. What we should do here is shadow colon false. Your virtual UI, some UI should not have shadows, right? The globe, this should have a shadow, okay? So my globe, if I have a virtual world, virtual map of the world, it should have shadow. I think it might be cast. True, but it should cast a shadow because it is emblematic of a physical thing. So shadow receive false. So here we should have shadow, and maybe we need our shadow component as a separate component, not as an attribute of material. This shadow should cast true. Okay, like if you're having virtual furniture, it should cast a shadow. I think it's because our opacity is decreased.
I think it's because the light is like too far away from the sphere. That's why it's not casting.
Yeah.
Yeah. You see, other things have shadows.
Yeah, you think it's because the light is so direct. So let's look at, that's a great point. Let's look at that cylinder, right? If that cylinder is like, oh, here's a virtual, like, here's a virtual punching bag, right? Like, yes, it should have a shadow because it's supposed to be something you can interact with in a physical manner. Say this cylinder is a measuring chart, right? A measuring chart doesn't need to have a shadow, right? In fact, it should be less there. So that cylinder, oh, you can see it says shadow. Just delete shadow, and then you remove shadow, okay? Shadow's gone. But what we can do here is we can say, maybe we want to say the ground, see that ground, that blue plane there, or that green plane, maybe this should not receive shadows. So if we say don't receive shadows, shadow equals receive false, well, the cylinder, cube, and sphere are still casting shadows. They're just not casting shadows to this plane. So does that make sense? All right, so that shows a couple other attributes you can play with. To wrap up, okay, how do you do basic flat UI? But I don't think that's the most interesting. That's not what you have to do, right? You have to show you have ability to do that, but that's not going to get you to pass this assignment. You can give the same materials to these other UI here. So really quick, you have your 3-up UI, okay? And that's great if you're like, oh, open the Spotify app, and then what are the top albums? But I really think the top album should be like floating above a turntable or something, right? Cool. You know how to bring in 2D UI elements and texture them and change the opacity because, some you want to be fully opaque, some you don't, right? Now, what else do we want to look at? Let's see, custom components. Okay, or let's just say cool stuff. There are a couple cool things that you should be able to add. Fog. Fog is cool. So your scene can have fog. Let's do this and give our scene some fog. I'm going to go into a scene because your scene will have fog. And I just closed my A fog. A-frame, IO. Other things you can add are lights. Did anybody add lights?
I did.
You did? Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Everybody should add lights. So fog here equals, I'm just copying what they have. Type, linear, color is 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now we get some fog in our scene, right? You can make a color, what kind of color do you want? Red? Now you have red fog. You can change the type to be, maybe instead of linear, you could change it to be exponential or something. But what else can we do? We can add a light, right? So let's add a light. I'm going to add a light beneath the camera, a-light. Now this puts the light This light is probably very bright. The light is lower, and that's why everything looks backlit. So let's open this up in the inspector, because I feel that light is something we have to do visually, right? Here, bringing up this light, okay? And I'm gonna change the color of this light to purple. And I don't think I need to change the ground color. What can we do here? We can adjust some of these capabilities like intensity and other things. Let's duplicate this light. So here we have a second light. Oh, what's weird is that second light doesn't show up in the thing, but you can change your lights to make them different types, like directional light. Your directional light is the sun. You can make a point light, right? Or you can make, I think, spotlight, okay? These all function differently. Directional light is the sun. I think by default there is a light in there. I'm gonna copy this light. I'm gonna bring up the intensity a little bit. So copying this light, I'll pull this light into, here we go. Here's our light, refresh. You can see some things are lit slightly differently. This doesn't maintain the position. Position equals, I know I want it high, 0 on the X, 3 on the Y, 0 on the Z. And then lastly, I'm gonna change our fog back to hash AAA because that in the documentation came in all right. So A light, what's happening here? Oh, you know what I did? I think I pasted that in incorrectly. Here, A light, lights. No dice, gotta rebuild this one. All right, let me show you how to do this. Let me redo this in a new scene while I take your questions. What questions or concerns do you have for homework?
So what if the JLTF models were like importing, uploading to the assets? Can we change the material for it, or does it only it can only apply with the texture that came with it?
Yeah, good question. You can't change the material to GLTFs or GLBs because they are set. What you can do is you can, okay, so this lighting is bad. I think you need multiple lights to make a scene look good. Let's see, can we add an OBJ? We can add an OBJ. So even in A-Frame version 1.0, you can add an OBJ where you get the, where you get the object and the material, and then you can change them individually. In the lectures I posted from last year on how I made this experience, I show you how to do that, and I probably mess up with it a couple times because, yeah, I'm not using OBJs in here. I can show you that really quickly. What further questions do you all have?
How do you rotate an object, not like rotate itself, like spin around some object?
How do you animate an object or orbit an object?
Animate, like rotating, but like spin around, not
sure.
like itself.
So in the, we're kind of running out of time here. This is an intro to WebVR, and what I think you're interested in is orbiting things, right? They show you how you can orbit objects in here. This is my answer, and it's the quintessential door answer. It's the quintessential door answer. How do you create a door, right? You know, doors, you know how doors should open, right? Did we go over that before? How you do a door in VR? Okay. All right. Well, here's how here's how you do a door. This still is not, so the lights aren't pulling in the position for some reason. Here's how you do a door. In VR, you do add, right? And you'd add a box, geometry. So this box, where's this box? This box is here, right? And then if you change this box to, be wider, taller, thinner, then you have a door, right? But if you just rotate this object, it rotates in the center. So what you have to do is you have to add a parent object, bring the door inside of this parent object, which you can't do in the editor. So here, let's add here's a dash. What do you want to orbit? A sphere? Let's do a box. Let's do a box. So here's a box. The box is at 0, 0, 0. Okay. Everything is in the same place. Let's give it a position 0 on the X, 1.5 on the Y, 0 on the Z. Okay. Now you see that box there. I'm going to comment this light out. Just know that you can create lights. The light position was not coming in. So the light is still very low. That's why everything seems dark. All right, so now we have this white box. How do we make you could add an animation rotation on the box, but the box would spin in the center. So what we have to do is we have to add a dash entity, add a parent entity. Okay, so now the box sits within this parent entity, okay? The parent entity's position is 0, 0, 0. Now, if I pull up a frame and I search for animation, right? We can get a simple property equals rotation to 360 loop, right? So if we pull this in, right, we can say the box has a position. It also has a rotation by default 0, 0, 0. And then animation, now the box rotates, okay? Let's do negative 360. That way it'll rotate clockwise, okay? But you don't want to rotate the box around the center of the box. You want to rotate the box around the center of, say, the world, right? Of the sphere. If you want this box to be like a satellite orbiting the world, right? And class, 1 minute left at 9. Oh no, goes to 9:55. I was going to say you could take off at time or stick around if you want to learn. Okay, so this box is rotating, right? Let's change the scale of this box to scale equals 0.25, 0.25, 0.25, right? So now we have the start of a satellite that's going to orbit this sphere. It's rotating, but we don't want the box to rotate around itself. We want the box to rotate around the world. You see how I placed the box off of the world, like ½ a meter off? Really, I think I need to place the box like a little bit more to the right, positive on the x-axis. Okay, cool. Box is rotating. I'll bring it down a little bit on the y-axis. Now let's make sure the box sits properly and nicely as a child of the parent entity, which is ID equals pivot, right? This is it's like you have a folder, right? Is the parent entity. Now the parent entity can also have a position. By default, the parent entity is 0, 0, 0, and sorry, we don't need to change the position of the parent entity. We just need to change the animation. We need to give the parent entity an animation. So here, if we rotate the parent, what's happening? Do you get it? So in AR, these will work well. Like we're getting some easing in and easing out by default, right? And that's not how things operate. So the curve here should be linear. In animation, we have easing. So ease in, ease out, we can change the attribute of ease. How do we do a linear? Others. Ease in, ease out. Easing equals, sorry, can you hear the truck? The beeping truck outside? It's killing me. Easing, I think you can add a linear easing here. Ease in, ease out. Oh, so I think I just say linear. Duration, semicolon, linear. So now this is moving at the same rate across the world. And then we can just speed that up by decreasing the duration to 500 milliseconds, 5,000 milliseconds. 5 seconds, it'll make a complete orbit, okay? Cool, and that is, or that's not working, easing equals, there. That's how you can add, there you go, animations to objects, how you can, again, parent objects, so the child object is in the folder of the parent object, and offsetting the child object from the parent object, you can animate. Now to look at this again, we have, this is, I really dislike this floor. We have, here's my first application. You can launch the globe application. The globe, maybe I'm evolving my ideas. Now I can add multiple of these, and now we can see satellites rotating the Earth, okay? This satellite rotates the pivot of this Earth, okay? So just be cautious of where you place this, right? Really, I should have brought this pivot up higher and then the box down lower. That one tutorial I linked, the basics of web VR, it shows this one, web VR intro. This shows all the basics to coding A-frame. It even gets a little deeper, but the things you might be missing are why something is placed at 1.5 meters high, right? And understand, you're not just designing for VR, you're designing for like what it's like to live and work with AR, right? These applications can exist on your kitchen countertop, right? As flat or as closed applications. These are probably the applications that most people think of. That's why I thought of those too. They're the table stakes. I want you to come back with something better. Okay, there's another thing I wanted to show you. How we add custom components from the registry. I sped through this last time, but I didn't say anything custom. In our A-frame registry, there are different things we can bring in, right? Like if you're trying to do the Spotify is your second scene, right? Or the club, right? Social VR club. Maybe audio analyzer is cool. Maybe music is cool. I want to add GIFs, and I know GIFs can give us a lot of capabilities. So just like we added the custom A-frame to give us the camera, here we're going to add this script, which allows us to have GIFs. I think we need both of these scripts. I'm going to err on the smarter side and bring in both of these scripts. So these scripts are going to sit at the top, right? Just like we bring in A-frame, we're going to bring in the capability to add GIFs. Make sure I close that script tag. Now, what do we have to add? Well, this gives us the ability to add material equals shader GIF. The source is the URL for this GIF. Let's see if this works. So here I'm going to copy this line. So we're going to change the material component of this floating, where is our box? Okay, so this box, it's called ID equals satellite, okay? Now we don't have any material there. I'm gonna clean up my code a little. So animations, we have our scale, then here we have our material, okay. Material equals shader GIF source URL. This should be a URL. Let's go to Giphy and let's pull a GIF from, let's pull confetti. Why confetti? Any guesses? Somebody?
Party.
What's that?
Party.
One more time?
Party.
Yeah, sure. Party. Okay, let's call it party. Party gift. The reason why I picked confetti is because this material is transparent, right? Now, let's see if this works. I haven't done this in special characters must be escaped. Oh, we need a quotation here. The source for this GIF, I have done this in the previous version. In the A-frame zombie one, we brought in a GIF. So forgive me that this is not working at the moment. I'll find how to bring in GIFs. But next week, we have another guest lecturer who you might know, Roland from the A-frame New York City meetup, and he's going to show us how to add physics. I can show you how to add physics. I've done that before, confident in it. It's much easier. But first, I want you to focus on your good interface design skills, right? How you lay out your scene, what is transparent, what is opaque, to know what's virtual, what's real. And then we'll get to custom things like physics and GIFs. Cool, so that's all I have to share today. I'm gonna stay on. I'm really determined. I brought it up last time, but I didn't show you. So I'm gonna make sure I can get GIFs working. I'll open it up to anybody who wants to share their work, ask questions while I find how to get GIFs here.
So I just want to make this clear. We're just doing the home page, right?
No, to be clear, and I think I forgot to add the assets from my asset management system. To be clear, there are 3 sets of deliverables. You need your information architecture for both scenes, okay? You need to design your scenes, right? Whether they're beautiful sketches, illustrations, from 3 views to show that you know how to design from 3 views. The plan view, top down, the scale view from the side, and the first person view, what the person sees, right? And then you build your launch VR scene, your home scene, your home, your studio, right? And then you come back and you tell me, hey, Sam, here is weather app, clock app, calendar, drawing app, right? These are all closed. Oh, here's a drawing app that's open because I want to pass this class, so I'm pushing it. So here's like a VR, AR whiteboard I mocked up. In fact, I thought that's a crap idea. So over here, I built a VR design tool that's like a sandbox, and it has like sand and clay and stuff in it, right? And tools. And then here's like an exercise app that's a closed app. I wanted the user to go into the exercise and they can play Beat Saber. And here's how Beat Saber has virtual objects of like, you know, the Star Wars, you know, X-Wings flying at you, and you cut them in half. And I say, Kyle, I love your first scene, but your second scene is not original, nor does it make sense. Like, put 3 X-Wings in the back and have them shoot lasers at you, and then you cut them in, you know, then you bounce a laser back. I don't know how you bounce a laser back, but that's what you need to come back with. So let me,
cool.
Before you take off, let me show you guys this one other thing here. This is junior work, and junior work from, you need to see this to see the minimum. This is, I'm just pulling up a random week here. This is Lainey's work, right? Lainey did the AR business card. This is her branding. These are some of her concepts for mobile AR, taking you through the space, kind of basic. you know, here's her concept for gallery vision. This is all flat 2D UI. She has some better ones here. Lainey, gallery vision. She ended up interning at RGA because she worked really hard. I tried to get her into RGA New York, no dice, but I told her to apply to RGA LA as well, and she got in. So, right, this is a storyboard. You don't have to do a storyboard, but this shows a scale view from the side. This is kind of information architecture, not really. This shows the first person view, right? These were her wireframes. And this was the first class she did of anything digital, but she's also showing interactions, right? If you come back with something like this, you don't pass, because this is, yes, she's showing many screens, but you already have more tools and capabilities in this. You also know that this is not visible if it's stuck in your camera. You can literally add things, just like we added to our, you added a cursor within your camera, right? If you add in your camera, you have the cursor. If you add a cube here, right, a box, you'll see that this box within your camera, even if you scale it down, scale equals 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, you'll see that this is not scale. Give me position equals, your cursor should be like X, 0, Y, 0, Z, like 0 points.
So she did like a whole branding thing, and she didn't really code everything, right? We're more dealing
Correct.
on
Correct. Because she was a junior in the interaction design class. Yeah, but she also made a great AR business card that was more than what I've seen from most or any of you. So here, if you add this, and like, if you add interface elements, right, within the camera, this is how you could add like a helmet, right? And that could be a textured image. And there are things that you can do that in that direction, but it really decreases usability because of your field of view, right? Save these concepts for your second scene, okay? Next week, physics, and you can add controls if anybody has if anybody has a headset, I'll show you how to add controllers. Stay on, I'm gonna get GIFs in there. What other questions or thoughts do you guys have? If you're good and you feel that you're good, feel free to take off.
So next week, we are showing the whole flow of those house.
Next week, you're showing, you don't have to show a whole flow of the house because there are only 2 experiences. There's the start experience when you wake up, you see all your apps around you, and then there is the next experience when you open the second app. What's the second app, right? So you have two different layouts. One that's based on the physical space of your home or your design studio, right? And it can be your dream home. It doesn't have to be your current physical home, right? And the second is a totally virtual environment, or it could be augmented, right? But it's something very different, something that deserves a different layout.
So do we have to render it out, like literally using any kind of a 3D software to render it out, or do we just have to sketch it out or Photoshop it?
You have to make it.
With A-frame?
Yes, with A-frame.
But how are we going to like put the scene? I mean the scene of our room in A-frame.
The scene of your what?
Scene of the room. The actual.
The scene of the room.
Instead of the reality thing.
Sorry, go. Okay. Yes, Vesper. How do you put the scene of the actual room in there? Fair question. Who's next? Let me get all the questions at once.
I'm confused. Like, do we need to do something augmented, like on your actual physical real space, or do you have to make something completely virtual?
So that choice is up to you. What you're designing for is a head-mounted display experience, okay? Now, you could wake up and put the Quest on, right? You could wake up and put the HoloLens 5 on, right? Or after work, you could put the Quest on and then you want a game. But when you put these headsets on, they change the world around you. The first thing is what your home or studio is like with spatial applications. The second thing is an application that you've opened.
So we can make it augmented. Like it could.
Yes, you can make it augmented.
Studio. It doesn't have to be fake, right?
Yes, it can be based on your actual studio. Now, that's up to you in terms of how you come back with that, right? You can say, hey, like, this is a VR experience that shows what it'd be like to wake up and wear augmented reality glasses. And you can have the Magic Leap video as an example, right? You can bring in things from HoloLens, right? This is how people use it in work. We're going to use it in daily life in the future, okay? Here's scene one, my applications in my house. Scene two is when I open an application.
If I don't have
is there two different information architectures?
I think it's
Yes, there are. There are two different scenes. Those scenes can be in one IA document. You can zoom in on the second scene to show in this exercise app, here's the user, you know, and then there are other objects that fly at the user. Some objects are interactive, some objects are not. And you could develop each into their own, but the information architecture is useful for seeing an experience at a high level view.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
But don't we need the 360 camera? Or
Do you need a skybox with a 360? Yes, they're very useful. Let me show you why. So here's the new Oculus Quest. If I go to where do I go to my manage videos? All right, let me show you a couple things, right? This is worth staying on for. Here, this is what it's like to wear the HoloLens. And then this is what it's like to, where are my, here's the Oculus, okay. All right, and here's MRTK. So this video shows you, all right. So this comes from Microsoft, right? This shows, oh, here are all the different components for the HoloLens that you can build to the Quest. And I can show you how to put this into your Oculus Quest if anybody has an Oculus Quest. And you can change all these things, right? And they're really easy to change, right? This is like, oh, you could have a cheese app, or you could have a something other app, right? Menus attached to the hand. Right? This is at the application level, built in Unity, but you're going to use web for now. Why this is relevant, here's the Oculus Quest. The Oculus Quest, the start screen, right? It's a home. Now, what does this home consist of? It consists of some objects, some basic architecture. Why? It's because, you know, it's not the structure that's important, it's the scene that's important. So many of the Oculus Quest start experiences, from the desert home to the spaceship tile, okay, to the Japanese retreat, it's less about the architecture, it's more about the scene. So what does the scene consist of? Okay, we do have some basic architecture, but we have a 360 photo in the background. And then if you wear this in VR, you can see that set of mountains, that's just a PNG back there. Now, if you look over to your left, this set of mountains is a PNG placed like 20 meters in the back. And then these set of mountains are like, you know, 50 meters back. And then there's the backdrop. So really compose your scene, right? And that's not something you have to design like top down. I'm gonna have this set of mountains, that set of mountains, and that set of mountains, unless you're using it to think through and design your experience. That's fine, but don't just do that to show me you can do that, right? Maybe do that to show other people you can do that. But this is less about the architecture, okay? And it's more about the scene and experience, right? Now, there are no closed applications running from here. The closed applications are all in this 2D menu. Why? It's because it's rendering the whole environment around you, right? So you know the difference between VR and AR, like the HoloLens. So here's the HoloLens this shows how you can have, robots jump out of the wall, right? That thing I showed you a thumbnail of before, these are robots jumping out of the wall. And the way you launch this application is it's literally a closed application sitting in your environment. Somewhere in here I have another version of what it's like with the HoloLens closed, but here you can see that HoloLens, it's the way that they display applications they're around you. Yes, sorry. Here, it's like this, right? This is a weather app. That's your recipes by your ingredients. That's a TV, right? But really, maybe your football app is a football field, right? And then you can go into the football field.
So
does that explain your questions?
So we're doing
yes,
like a just a visual one, not in A-frame.
No, you're doing all of them
in A-frame.
Yeah.
Yes, you're doing these things. Here's homework.
But
for homework,
how do we input? How do we import the entire scene in A-frame?
How do you import the entire scene in A-frame? You build it in A-frame. If you want to build your house in Cinema 4D or whatever, that's also fine, right? But in A-frame, you have the capability to do everything. But look, you know what the design process is, right? What matters first? Layout, right? Composition. So you can add blocks and then you can replace that A box or A cube with A model later. What you should do is you should decrease the opacity of the box, make it look semi-transparent so it looks like that is a hologram.
So just like map it out with basic cubes and then probably gonna...
No, here, design it, right? Design it from, you're gonna design your home scene, right? Where you can launch application. First deliverable, okay here, deliverables, right? Create your scene-based information architecture. Sorry?
Could you put that, could you post one?
Of course, this will be the homework. I believe this homework's already posted.
Like examples with multiple scenes and stuff?
Yeah, here's the first example. This scene is the first example of multiple scenes, right? Start scene, game scene. But yours is your future home scene with an app scene behind it, right? So then interactions are the next level, how you can interact to click and get there. So your deliverables.
With events like clicking and interacting.
Yeah, clicking is simple. Physics or GIFs more advanced. Deliverables, information architecture first, because first you have to think big, right? Then start to design your scene, and that's design, right? And you should denote what's virtual, what's real, and then you're going to, obviously, web VR, right? 2 scenes, right? Like a spell. Cool. Any more questions?
Are we assuming that we have like glasses and the grip, or it
Good question.
phone?
I can show you how you can grip things, but you don't have rigging and physics like a bow to anchor the strings and pull that back. That's a little more advanced. I can show you how to grab a bow. Now, 3D design tools, check out Adobe Dimension. Adobe Dimension is free. It's easier than Blender. You can create shapes, and you can create basic things like cubes, spheres, and it's okay to build things out and then export multiple. Other tools, Vectoray is a tool, Vectoray and Tinkercad. So if you want to extrude your logo, Tinkercad is free. You can extrude your logo very simply. You import an SVG and then extrude. In fact, if you import the SVG, it'll automatically extrude it for you. So yeah, don't just bring in other assets. You can see in the 30 minutes that we did, we have 3 UI, right, a flat UI. You have a skybox with some fog. You have the start to a globe, right? And you have a camera that we know that can click.
Are you gonna unlock
Okay.
homework so we can
Yes.
get to submit the thing today?
Yes, for sure. Oh, wait, you mean submit it late?
Yeah, I presented, but yeah, I was working on the positioning.
So you're,
But you saw
don't be
it.
late, right? Get your URLs in, right? You can continue to update it, but homework's always due before a class. Yes, I'll update that so you can add it. Thank you.
Also, so do you have, because it was actually ready last night. The thing is that with the AR part, once moving to AR, I had to reposition the whole thing, and that took a lot of time. So do you have any like fix for that, or any
Yeah. Pull your camera back 3 meters, so that way everything's at 0. Or add a parent to it, right? Add a entity equals parent, a entity down here, and then you can position your parent further. Cool. Vesper, Minka, Fangjiao, Rock. Any questions? Kind of the quiet crowd.
Also, so we're gonna bring us a 3D scene and the UI and the design and the experience.
Information architecture, design, experience. Sound good? That sounds like a design process, right? Information architecture, design, experience. Yes,
you have
Rock.
to show the 3 different views, the top view and left. How do I do this?
Up to you. Beautiful sketch, Illustrator, Sketch, Figma. Bring humans into it, right? So when we looked at humans, this is legit. You could use these, remember these humans? You could use these, right, to mock up how someone is here and then how they start to tap something, right? But just source where you get these things from. That's a fair question, though. But this is good from the scale view, right? Then again, don't let this work. Don't let the things that you bring in speak louder than your work. Desaturate those, right? Apply a design language that identifies real, virtual annotation, just like Brian did. Brian's work, I think, was from a hackathon or a group project where you all end up like hitting each other at the last minute. So one person ends up doing everything really rushed, right? Like really pay attention to your work, because the design documentation is going to matter more, right? A-Frame is version 1 now, right? If you're still shopping the same portfolio around, like A-Frame is going to be like A-Frame version 2, right? And it took like 4 years to get version 1, okay? But what's going to be legit is your thought process and your understanding of the technology. Cool. Somebody please leave. Please start to take off unless you have further questions. We're past class time, so you're not getting any extra credit for sticking around. You'll get better credit by starting to work on your homework now. All right. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
You.
Bye.
Bye, good night. Bye.
Bye. Rock, you good? Vesper, you okay? Richie, any last questions? All right.